Yes, you guys, where we just get cozy
Yeah.
and delve into the books that everyone's talking about. And today we are diving deep into Kristen Hanna's The Women, a
Oh.
novel that takes us right into the heart of the Vietnam War, but through a lens we rarely see. The experiences of women, we've got reviews, personal stories, and even some insights into Hanna's process.
Wow.
So buckle up, because we're about to uncover a whole new layer to this conflict.
I am so excited for this one. What's so captivating about The Women is that it doesn't shy away from the complexities of war. It throws you right into this jarring shift. You're basking in sunny California 1 minute,
Okay.
alongside Frankie McGrath, our protagonist,
Yeah.
then suddenly plunged into the brutal reality of war-torn Vietnam the next.
And you really get the sense that Frankie isn't some seasoned war hero. She's a young nursing student, fresh-faced, a little naive, who makes this almost impulsive decision to join the Army Nurse Corps.
Oh, yeah.
Talk about a baptism by fire.
Definitely a baptism by fire. It's a sensory overload. From the moment she arrives,
Wow.
one reviewer described a particularly harrowing scene during a mezcal, a mass casualty incident, where Frankie is practically drowning in the chaos, surrounded by the sights and sounds of unimaginable suffering, and it really underscores that for those in the thick of it,
Yeah.
even fleeting moments of camaraderie can't fully mask the ever-present danger.
It's almost like a constant tension humming beneath the surface, right?
Totally.
Knowing that at any moment,
Yeah.
things could descend into chaos again. But what really struck me was the realization that these women, who served with such bravery and compassion, were essentially written out of history.
It's a heartbreaking truth. While male veterans were grappling with the label of baby killers,
Wow.
women were simply told they weren't even there. It's like their sacrifices were deemed insignificant, their stories unworthy of being told, adding another layer of injustice to their already heavy burdens.
And this brings us to a crucial point, the often overlooked aspect of the war, the homecoming. It's one thing to face the horrors of the battlefield, but to then return to a nation that wants to simply forget the war ever happened, that's a whole other battle in itself.
It really is. You know, it's so easy to romanticize the idea of a hero's welcome.
Right.
But the reality for many Vietnam veterans, particularly women, was starkly different. Frankie's struggles, finding her place in a society that now felt alien, the lack of support for female veterans, the emotional turmoil, it mirrors the broader societal response to the war.
Yeah.
It makes me question, what happens to the human psyche when the sacrifices are met with indifference or even hostility?
Before we get too deep into that, let me just remind you to hit that subscribe button and leave us a review. We love hearing from fellow bookworms like yourselves. Now back to Frankie's story. What really resonated with me was the theme of camaraderie,
Okay.
the powerful bonds forged between women in the face of such unimaginable adversity.
Absolutely. It's as though amidst the chaos and suffering, these women found solace and strength in each other. The shared experiences, the unspoken understanding. It created a sense of belonging that was so desperately needed in a world that seemed determined to isolate them.
And it really shines a light on the resilience of the human spirit. One reviewer described a scene where...
No, it was such a small moment, but it spoke volumes. The nurses were huddled together during a rare moment of quiet, sharing a tattered paperback novel, their laughter echoing through the ward, a brief flicker of normalcy in the midst of chaos. It was a reminder that even in the darkest of times, human connection can offer a glimmer of hope.
That's what makes Hanna's storytelling so powerful. She doesn't just focus on the grand narratives of war. She zooms in on these intimate moments, these glimpses of humanity that remind us that, even in the face of unimaginable hardship, life goes on, connections are made, and hope flickers. But it's not all sunshine and roses, is it?
Exactly.
Frankie's homecoming, and those of many women like her, was far from the triumphant return they deserved.
We often think of the war's impact as something contained to the battlefield.
Right.
But The Women shows us the ripple effects, the ways in which the conflict seeped into the lives of those back home, leaving indelible marks on families and relationships. Frankie's mother, for example, represents a generation wrestling with societal expectations and personal sacrifices, forced to bear the weight of worry and uncertainty, while maintaining a semblance of normalcy.
It's like there's this unspoken struggle happening on both sides of the war.
Absolutely.
The women in Vietnam battling for survival and recognition, while the women back home are fighting their own battles against societal pressures, against fear, against the crushing weight of silence.
And let's not forget the backdrop against which Frankie returns, a nation deeply divided by the war. She comes home not to parades and celebrations, but to protests, anger, and a growing anti-war sentiment directed at veterans. It's a harsh reality check,
Yeah.
and it forces us to confront the psychological impact of this disconnect.
To put everything on the line for your country, only to be met with hostility and rejection upon your return. It's a betrayal on a fundamental level.
It is.
And for women like Frankie, who were already told their service didn't count, it must have felt like a double whammy. It's no wonder she grapples with finding her footing, her place in a world that's changed while she was gone.
You know, one reviewer described Frankie as frustrating
Oh.
and not always likable
Interesting. Why is that?
because it challenges the traditional archetype of the war hero. Frankie isn't this flawless beacon of strength and resilience. She's messy, she's flawed, she makes questionable decisions, and she struggles to cope with the trauma she's endured. And that's what makes her so relatable, so human.
That's such a good point. It reminds us that trauma manifests in different ways. And healing isn't always a linear upward trajectory.
Right.
It's messy. It's complicated. And it often involves taking wrong turns and stumbling along the way. And Frankie's journey reflects that beautifully. It's not about glorifying war or heroism. It's about exploring the raw, unfiltered realities of what it means to be human, to carry the weight of experience,
Yeah.
and to find your way back to yourself.
And that search for belonging, for meaning, that's something we can all connect with, regardless of whether we've experienced war firsthand.
Absolutely. And speaking of connection, I think one of the things that makes the women so compelling is Hannah's masterful use of language.
Yes.
The reviews are full of praise for her ability to paint such vivid pictures with her words.
She doesn't shy away from the harsh realities of war. The sights, the sounds, the smells, it's all there visceral and immediate, drawing you into the heart of the action. But what's truly remarkable is her ability to balance those intense moments with quieter, more introspective passages, capturing the nuances of human emotion with incredible depth and sensitivity.
Like that scene with the nurses huddled around the paperback. You're right there with them. You can feel the weight of their shared experiences, the comfort they find in each other's presence.
It's that juxtaposition, the brutality of war set against the enduring beauty of human connection, that makes The Women such a profound reading experience. It's not just a war story. It's a story about the resilience of the human spirit, the enduring power of hope, and the profound ways in which we find meaning and connection even in the face of overwhelming darkness.
If you're enjoying this deep dive into The Women, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and leave us a review. It helps other bookworms like you find us, and we truly appreciate your support. It sounds like The Women is more than just a war story or even a historical novel. It's a story about the human experience in all its complexity, the things that bind us together and the ways in which we find the strength to keep going even when the world feels like it's falling apart.
Yeah, and it's a story that challenges us to confront our own preconceived notions about war, about heroism, and about the lasting impact of trauma on individuals and societies.
It makes you realize how often history is told from a single perspective, leaving countless stories unheard and countless voices silenced.
Right, and by diving into those narratives like the ones Hannah so skillfully brings to life in The Women, we gain a much richer understanding of the human condition, the cost of conflict, and the enduring strength of the human spirit.
It also begs the question, how can we ensure that the sacrifices of all those who serve, regardless of gender, are truly recognized and honored, not just with parades and speeches, but with the ongoing support and understanding they deserve?
That's a great question. I think that's where empathy comes, in the willingness to step outside of our own experiences and try to grasp the profound and often invisible wounds that war inflicts.
It's about recognizing the signs of trauma, listening with open hearts, and creating a society that values the service of veterans and provides them with the resources they need to heal and rebuild their lives.
And I think what's remarkable is that Hannah manages to convey all of this, the historical context, the emotional depth, the social commentary, while still crafting a narrative that's utterly gripping and impossible to put down.
One reviewer said The Women is an incredible read. It's an epic story about a distressing period in history, but at the heart of it, it's a story of humanity. It's about heroic women who made huge sacrifices for their country.
Couldn't have said it better myself. It's a testament to Hannah's skill as a storyteller that she can weave together such intricate themes while still keeping the reader completely engrossed in the lives of her characters.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into The Women, we leave you with this. If there's one thing this novel teaches us, it's that we must never forget the sacrifices made by those who serve. And we must strive to create a world that honors their stories, values their contributions, and supports their journeys back to wholeness.
And for those of you eager to experience Frankie's story firsthand, you can find a link to purchase the women in our episode description.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Book Nook podcast. We hope you've gained some new insights into this powerful novel and the often overlooked experiences of women in the Vietnam War. Until next time, happy reading.